Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening a really fascinating, and I have to say, quite concerning, stack of documentation.
Yeah, it's pretty detailed.
It's a custom deep dive looking into these alleged tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, that are supposedly being used within certain legal circles.
Right.
We're diving deep into how exploiting procedural rules, the really nitty-gritty mechanics of law, can allegedly be weaponized, turned into something that guarantees court success and just completely neutralizes the opposition.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
Our source material today, it's this meticulous account recorded October 7th, 2025. It's from Ronaldo J. Aguiar Marcano. He's involved in some complex litigation down in Texas.
Okay.
And he's documented with what seems like alarming precision what he believes is a signature move used by the lawyers on the other side.
So our mission today is really to unpack this alleged legal signature. We're going to be looking at Texas litigation rules, specifically the ones about notice periods, how you tell the other side what you're doing.
Exactly. How those rules can be, well, maneuvered into what the source actually calls a legal weapon.
A legal weapon. And he even has a name for the firms involved: Morgan Hibner, the Adams law firm, and the Roberts, Markle, Weinberg, Butler, Haley, PC. He calls them ACME Law.
Yeah, like the cartoons. A nod to the Roadrunner, where Wile E. Coyote's plans always backfire. Though, I mean, in this case, the source argues the plans are actually working. For now, anyway.
Right. The ACME plans are succeeding here, allegedly.
And we really need to stress the scope he's talking about. It describes this as not just a fight against him. He sees it as a planet-scale operation.
Planet scale.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, potentially targeting thousands of people systematically. He views it as a kind of blueprint for scalable control using the legal system.
Wow. Okay. That is a massive claim. We have to be really clear throughout this dive. We're focusing on the mechanics he's describing, the how.
Right.
Because if a procedural loophole can enable what he's calling planet-scale impact, we absolutely need to understand that mechanism first. So let's get into it. Let's unpack this core TTP.
Okay, so let's start with the goal. What's the ultimate objective here? According to the source, it's startlingly ambitious, but the process itself is deceptively simple.
Okay.
The aim is to be able to file any motion, document, piece of evidence, whatever, and successfully get it admitted into the official court record.
Any document.
Any document. And here's the kicker. Without opposition from the other party. Completely unopposed.
Wait, hold on. You're saying file anything and have it guaranteed to stick, even if the document is, I don't know, fraudulent, badly argued, totally irrelevant. It just goes into the record as fact because no one could successfully object.
That's precisely the claim. If they execute this maneuver correctly, it basically makes it impossible for the adversary to file an objection that the court will actually uphold.
So it gives the ACME law firm, as he calls them, a kind of legal immunity for their filings.
Exactly. And the source, he describes this effect as potentially, and this is a quote, better than a nuclear weapon.
Better than a nuclear weapon. Why that comparison?
It's not about raw power, like an explosion. It's about deterrence, or rather, the lack of deterrence. Nuclear weapons work because of mutually assured destruction, right? The threat of response.
Right, the MAD.
But if this TTP prevents the legal response, the objection, from ever being officially recognized by the court, then the other side lacks deterrence. They can't effectively counterstrike within the legal framework.
I see. So the side using the TTP can operate with impunity because there's no threat of a successful legal comeback.
That's the idea. And what makes it so effective, or maybe insidious, is the deniability.
How so?
Well, according to the source, the brilliance lies in how it looks on the surface. The outcome doesn't scream biased judge or fixed case.
Okay.
It just looks like the opposing party. Well, they messed up. They failed to follow basic procedural steps. It looks like a well-executed legal maneuver. It's like using due process rules against the very idea of due process.
Okay, that's quite something. Let's break down the shield then. Where's the actual legal hook? How does this alleged exploitation work?
It apparently hinges entirely on the Texas Code and rules of procedure, specifically the rules around notice periods for hearings.
Notice periods. Okay.
The source points directly to Texas Rule 21. That rule governs how documents have to be shared, served, before they're used in court.
Right. You have to let the other side know what you're bringing to the table. And this leads us to the 3 days rule, right? What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, the requirement is for proper notice. Basically, if you plan to use a document, a motion, some piece of evidence at a hearing, you generally have to give the other party 3 full business days of notice beforehand.
3 full business days. Okay, and the source mentioned email.
Yeah, he notes that acceptable notice includes traceable forms like email, which is key because it creates an immutable timestamp. You know exactly when it was sent and received.
All right, so we have the foundation, 3 full business days notice, verifiable by email timestamp. Now let's get into the deadline ambush. How does this simple rule become a tool to just neutralize objections?
Okay, so the core tactic, according to the source, is filing the document. Let's imagine it's a draft order, trying to slap on heavy sanctions or finalize some disputed verdict.
Something significant.
Right, something the other side would definitely want to fight. They file this document at the absolute very last moment allowed by that 3-day notice deadline.
Okay, let's use the source's calendar example to make this concrete. Say there's a hearing scheduled for Friday morning.
Right.
To meet the 3 full business days rule, the ACME lawyer has to send that document at the absolute latest sometime on Monday afternoon, right?
Exactly. Let's say they hit send on Monday at 5:00 p.m. sharp. That gives the respondent Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. 3 full business days before the Friday hearing. Seems legit, right?
On the face of it, yes, they met the deadline, just barely.
But here, according to the source, is where the procedural trap snaps shut. The respondent, let's call him Wile E. Coyote in this scenario, as the source implies. He gets the document at 5:00 p.m. Monday. He opens it, maybe it takes him a few minutes, and he realizes, whoa, this is completely wrong, or this is fraudulent. He knows he has to object immediately.
Makes sense. You can't just sit on it.
So he scrambles. He quickly drafts a detailed objection, maybe outlining 12 solid reasons why this order is flawed. Unless he's incredibly fast, he files his objection back via email at 5:02 p.m. on Monday, just 2 minutes later.
Wow, okay. Super responsive.
But now, the loophole gets him. For his objection to be considered properly filed ahead of the Friday hearing, well, that objection is technically a new filing.
I think I see where this is going.
His filing must also give the ACME law attorney 3 full business days notice before that same Friday hearing.
So if he files his objection at 5:02 p.m. on Monday, that objection itself doesn't meet the 3-day notice requirement for the Friday hearing?
Precisely. Even though he received the original flawed document with the bare minimum notice, the rules demand that his response be treated as a separate motion needing its own 3 days notice. It's basically a logistical impossibility baked into the timing.
So it doesn't matter how quickly or how validly he responds.
Not if the initial filing was timed perfectly at the edge.
So fast forward to Friday morning in court. The ACME lawyer presents their draft order. The judge asks, any objections? Respondent stands up, points to his detailed objection filed just after 5 p.m. on Monday. What happens then?
Then the ACME law attorney delivers the countermove. They leverage the very rule they barely complied with themselves. They'll say something like, Your Honor, I object to this objection being considered.
They object to the objection.
Yes, I did not receive proper notice for this filing, as required by Rule 21. It was filed after the 3-day window closed for me to review it before today's hearing.
And because the court has to follow the procedural rules designed, ironically, to ensure everyone has fair preparation time,
The judge, according to the source's analysis of these situations, is legally compelled to agree. They have to strike the respondent's objection from consideration for that hearing, even if the objection is 100% valid on its merits.
so the objection is struck, gone.
Gone. The original document, maybe fraudulent, maybe harmful, gets admitted unopposed. It becomes part of the record. And crucially, the record just reflects that the respondent failed to follow the rules, even though the timing made it impossible from the start.
That's the signature TTP, ensuring any real objection is defeated on a technicality every single time, just by timing the initial filing perfectly.
That's the mechanism described. It wins the battle over that specific document before the substance is even argued.
Yeah, ingenious in a deeply troubling way, exploiting the letter of the law to arguably destroy the spirit of it.
And it's interesting, the source notes that this very precise, almost surgical TTP wasn't the first approach. It seems to have evolved.
Oh, what did they do before?
Initially, the ACME law firms apparently used a much cruder method, something the source labels the judicial ambush.
Okay, judicial ambush versus the signature TTP. What's the difference?
The earlier tactic, the ambush, was just blatant, a known violation of due process, basically. Before some kind of intervention happened, the attorney would apparently file documents much closer to the hearing,
How close?
sometimes 12 to 15 hours before, or even just the night before the hearing.
Wow, okay. That doesn't even pretend to follow the 3-day rule.
Not at all. The clear intent there was just overwhelm the other party. Give them absolutely no time to prepare a meaningful response. They'd be scrambling overnight.
I bet that led to a lot of angry filings from the other side. Motions for sanctions, maybe?
Oh, yeah. The source mentions filing repeated motions for sanctions, specifically against Morgan Hibner, for exactly this kind of behavior. He even notes that 4 of those specific motions are still sitting there, pending a ruling from the judge.
4 motions pending, so not much immediate consequence for the behavior.
That seems to be the implication. Despite the known violations, despite the filed complaints, the behavior allegedly continued. That suggests, at least from the source's perspective, a low level of accountability at that stage.
So what changed? Why shift from the blatant ambush to the more refined signature TTP? When did the behavior stop?
According to the source, the shift happened quite dramatically, actually, right after he filed a specific complaint with the appellate court, not the trial court.
Ah, going up the chain.
Exactly. And this complaint was specifically designed to demonstrate bias in the district court by documenting this pattern of late, short-notice filings.
So shining a light from above, essentially.
That seems to be the idea. Once the appellate court started looking, the source claims the really blatant violations, the ones that just completely ignored the deadline, suddenly stopped.
And that's when the signature TTP was born. It shifted from breaking the rules outright to, well, weaponizing the rules themselves.
Precisely. The documents weren't filed 12 hours before anymore. Now they were filed with surgical accuracy to exploit that notice deadline loophole we just discussed.
Using the rule, not ignoring it.
Yes. And the source, he pinpoints the exact moment he realized this shift. There was a specific document, he calls it a fraudulent third draft of something, sent at 9:18 a.m. on a Tuesday.
9:18 a.m. Tuesday. That sounds very specific. Why was that timing significant?
Because for the upcoming hearing, that timing was just short of providing the technically required 3 full days' notice. Not wildly short like before, but precisely calculated to be just under the wire.
So the extreme precision was the giveaway.
For him, yes. It signaled a deliberate, calculated strategy. They'd moved from a crude bludgeon, the night before filing, to this razor-sharp scalpel, measuring time down to the minute.
Measuring it to ensure that the recipient's deadline to file a response that also needed 3 days' notice back to the sender became basically impossible by design.
Exactly. And this leads us right into the critical second part of this alleged strategy. This whole TTP, this timing game, it's completely useless unless the ACME law firm can control the court's schedule.
Control the schedule. How?
They need to be able to schedule 2 related hearings close enough together that providing proper notice for objections or responses between them becomes mathematically impossible.
Okay, that sounds like a key piece.
This is what the source calls the nuclear weapon, unequal access to the calendar.
Unequal access to the calendar. Let's dig into that. The source provides a specific case study, right? September 8th and 11th. This seems crucial for his claim of systemic complicity.
It really is a pivotal example in his documentation. So, September 8th, there was a very contentious hearing. The source alleges that during this hearing, agreements were made, but under coercion.
Coercion? How?
Specifically, he claims, under the threat of ordering a psychiatric evaluation, which you can imagine creates an incredibly high-stakes, stressful situation. Decisions made under duress.
Absolutely. Okay, so agreements made under alleged duress on the 8th. What happened next?
The follow-up hearing, the one meant to finalize the verbal verdict reached during that potentially coerced agreement, was scheduled for September 11th.
Okay, 8th to the 11th. That's Friday and Monday.
Right, which leaves only one full business day in between. Friday, September 9th was the day after, then the weekend, then the hearing, Monday the 11th. Wait, let me check the dates. September 8th and 11th. Ah, yes. If the 8th was a Thursday, then Friday the 9th is one business day, then the weekend, then Monday the 11th. The point is, very little time.
Okay, very tight scheduling.
Extremely tight.
Yeah.
And the source says he actually did try to undo the agreement. He sent a notice withdrawing his consent on September 9th, the day right after the initial hearing, realizing the coercion.
So he acted quickly to withdraw consent, but the schedule.
The schedule made his attempt legally futile, according to his analysis. If he formally withdraws consent or files an objection on the 9th and the finalizing hearing is on the 11th,
He can't give the ACME lawyer the required 3 full business days notice before the 11th hearing for that withdrawal or objection.
exactly. Any attempt to withdraw consent or object would just be met with the standard Rule 21 counter-objection on the 11th. Your Honor, we didn't get proper notice of this withdrawal.
Wow. So in this specific instance, they didn't even need to do the Monday 5 p.m. filing trick. Just scheduling the hearings that close together was the execution of the TTP. The system itself guaranteed the outcome.
That's the source's key argument here. The TTP fundamentally relies on having the power to manipulate the court calendar, and his analysis points to what he sees as a stark imbalance in who has that power.
Okay, this is where we have to carefully handle the source's claims about complicity, particularly involving the judge's own scheduler. This is a serious allegation.
Extremely serious. And we need to be clear, this is the source's interpretation based on the pattern he observed. He posits that the ability to get hearings scheduled with such short notice for the opposing counsel, while he faces long delays for his own requests, is evidence that the scheduler must be, in his words, in on it.
What's the pattern he observed? What evidence does he offer for this unequal access?
Okay, so he provides contrasting examples. When he, the source, tried to schedule what he considered an emergency hearing, dealing with something he perceived as a critical issue, like an alleged child kidnapping.
Okay, a definite emergency in his view.
The judge's scheduler apparently gave him a hearing date 30 days out, a full month's wait.
30 days for a perceived emergency. And what about the opposing counsel, Morgan Hippner?
According to the source, when Morgan Hibbner filed motions for things that are arguably non-emergency matters, like requesting attorney's fees,
Right, important to them, but not exactly life or death.
they allegedly received hearing dates with only 2 days' notice.
2 days versus 30 days, that's a dramatic difference in access.
It's a devastating contrast, if accurate. And the source's conclusion is that this unequal access isn't just unfair, it's the essential prerequisite for the signature TTP to work reliably.
Because it creates the compressed timeline needed for the Rule 21 ambush.
Precisely. The scheduler, whether they're doing it intentionally as the source alleges, or perhaps just inadvertently following established patterns or requests from certain firms, becomes the linchpin. The person or system enabling this deniable setup. That's why the source calls this calendar access the ultimate nuclear weapon.
Because it ensures the target is already boxed in by an impossible schedule before the perfectly timed Rule 21 filing even happens.
Yes, the two elements, the scheduling control and the procedural ambush, they have to work together. One enables the other.
It certainly paints a picture, based on his account, where the system isn't just being exploited passively. The very mechanisms of access needed for due process are allegedly being actively controlled and deployed selectively, all to ensure a certain outcome, potentially affecting, as he claims, thousands targeted by this planet-scale operation.
That's the gravity of the situation as he presents it.
Okay, so faced with this situation where the rules themselves and even the court calendar are allegedly turned into weapons, a conventional legal defense seems, well, inadequate. What does the source propose?
He recognized that just playing the same game, trying to object within the impossible timelines, wasn't working. He needed a counter strategy that addressed the core vulnerabilities being exploited.
And what did he identify as the legal system's ultimate vulnerability in this?
Exactly. You can know, you're right, you can have all the evidence, but if you don't frame your request using the specific language the court recognizes, your motion, your objection, it might just get dismissed on a technicality. It never gets heard on the merits.
And this reinforces the control of that specialized professional circle of lawyers and insiders.
That's his argument. So if success hinges on knowing these arcane magic words and using them correctly and quickly, then the law itself, or rather access to its correct invocation, becomes the ultimate pillar of control for this network he believes he's fighting.
Okay, so the countermeasure needs to tackle both the magic words problem and the timing problem created by the TTP.
Right. It has to defeat that dependency on specialized knowledge and, crucially, defeat the time constraint simultaneously.
So what did he develop?
He's building a system. He's branded it Roadrunner Law.
Roadrunner Law. Okay, sticking with the cartoon theme, but this time for the defense. What is it? He calls it a legal vaccine?
Yeah, that's the term he uses. The idea is to open up access, to bridge that knowledge gap using technology. It's not about hiring a more expensive lawyer. It's about applying machine speed to this procedural fight.
Machine speed? Okay, tell us about that. How does this automated response work? He mentioned 500 computing cores.
Right. The 500 cores are essentially the processing engine. Think about when a complex legal document lands maybe 100 pages, full of boilerplate, dense language, maybe deliberately obscure clauses.
Designed to be hard to parse quickly.
Exactly. A human reviewer, even a skilled lawyer, might need hours, maybe days, to read it thoroughly, understand the implications, spot the subtle procedural flaws buried deep inside.
And that time lag is precisely what the ACME Law TTP relies on, forcing the human opponent to run out of the clock.
So Roadrunner Law aims to short-circuit that. The 500 cores, they don't read like a human. They use advanced natural language processing, AI, connected to legal databases. They scan the document almost instantly.
What are they looking for?
They're looking for those magic words, but also for flaws. Specific statutory citations, procedural requirements, potential errors or inconsistencies in the opponent's own filing. They compare it against the relevant Texas laws, local court rules, the case history.
So instead of a person spending 20 hours finding that, say, the opponent cited an outdated version of Rule 21 or missed a key precedent.
The computer flags it potentially in minutes or less.
And then what? Does it just flag issues?
No, the next step is key. It helps generate an immediate, formalized, and legally sound objection or response. It's not just saying, I disagree. It drafts the counter-arguments, using the precise legal language and formatting the court requires to even consider the argument.
It automates the creation of the properly formatted legal response.
That's the goal. And there's a concrete example of this system in action, which really highlights how it counters the TTP. Remember that filing sent at 9:01 a.m. on a Tuesday?
Yeah, the one that signaled a shift to the precise TTP.
Right. When that document arrived, designed to exploit the notice period, a traditional human response would likely have been too slow. It would have fallen into the trap.
Okay.
But using the Roadrunner Law technology, the source was able to analyze the document, identify the issues, formulate the defense, and file a formal, very detailed objection.
Yeah.
Get this, in only 65 minutes.
65 minutes, an hour and 5 minutes from receiving a complex legal filing to filing a formal objection. That's incredible speed in legal terms.
It's lightning fast. And the objection wasn't just a quick no. It apparently contained 12 distinct legal arguments.
12 arguments in 65 minutes.
Yeah, including pointing out the lack of proper notice based on the 9:08 a.m. timing, detailing the alleged fraudulence in the draft order itself, citing relevant case law. A comprehensive response.
So that hyper-fast response completely neuters the timing element of the TTP. It blows up the Rule 21 ambush.
Strategically, yes. It seems to achieve several critical things. First, it puts the opponent on notice immediately. They absolutely cannot credibly walk into court later and claim they didn't get proper notice of the response because the objection landed in their inbox barely an hour after they sent the initial document.
It kills their counter-objection before they can even make it.
It should, logically. Second, this documented, time-stamped, rapid response creates rock-solid evidence for the appellate court.
Building the case for bias or systemic issues.
Exactly. Every time the ACME firm allegedly tries the TTP, this automated system generates another data point, another piece of evidence showing the pattern, the intent to exploit the rules. It strengthens the argument that this isn't accidental, it's strategic.
And the source notes the irony here, right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox, he points out. The solution he's developing for this legal attack vector is pure technology. And it's deployed against a network that he also describes as being, at its heart, a technology-driven entity itself.
So it's tech versus tech, but playing out in the legal arena. A fight over controlling data, timing, and procedure where machine speed becomes the necessary counter to human manipulation.
That's the landscape he describes.
The leap from traditional legal fighting to this Roadrunner law system is just immense. And to really drive home the scale of that strategic shift, the source shared a personal anecdote, right? Something that kind of contextualizes his earlier attempts at defense.
Yeah, it's quite revealing. He calls it the tale of the fake cameras. This happened about 2 years before the development of Roadrunner Law.
Fake cameras, what was going on?
Well, he describes facing significant alleged harassment at the time. There was one specific incident he highlights involving a neighbor, identified as Michael Pretty, who the source claims works at CITGO, which he notes is a Venezuelan-controlled company.
Okay, what happened with the neighbor?
The allegation is that this neighbor deliberately planted a dog in the source's backyard as a pretext to gain unauthorized entry onto his property, a way to get inside, essentially.
Okay, that sounds pretty intrusive and stressful. So, facing that kind of perceived threat, what was the source's response back then, 2 years ago?
His response was to go on Amazon and buy fake security cameras, the little plastic dome things. They cost about $5 each.
$5 fake cameras from Amazon.
Yeah. The idea was purely visual deterrent, just hoping to create the illusion of surveillance, make anyone thinking of trying something hesitate, a basic psychological defense.
And looking back now, how does he view that action?
He reflects on it as being almost touchingly naive. Given the level of sophisticated surveillance, alleged house wiring, infiltration by law enforcement, and even control over supply chains, including, potentially, Amazon itself, that he now believes he was facing.
The idea that fake cameras would fool anyone seems quaint.
Exactly. He figures the opponents, operating at that alleged level, would have known instantly they were fake. They probably would have found it amusing, maybe even laughed at such a rudimentary attempt at deterrence.
So the $5 fake cameras were like bringing a plastic knife to a drone fight.
Pretty much. It was a psychological defense against an enemy he now sees as operating in the digital, procedural, and systemic realms. They weren't going to be deterred by a dummy camera. They were likely amused by it.
So comparing that $5 fake camera strategy from 2 years ago to today, System 500 cores, analyzing legal docs, firing back 12-point objections in 65 minutes, it just starkly highlights this radical evolution in his defense strategy.
Absolutely. He went from trying to trick the eye, a superficial defense, to trying to beat the clock, a procedural and technological defense.
It's like he realized that if the battleground is the manipulation of procedure and time, a psychological deterrent is completely meaningless.
Right. Only a superior system, one capable of matching or exceeding the opponent's speed and complexity in that specific domain, could offer any real defense. Technology had to become the shield and the sword.
And the takeaway from this, for the listener, for anyone trying to understand this, it's not just about his specific fight, is it? What's the broader goal of Roadrunner law?
Well, crucially, the source states the goal is for the system to eventually be open source.
Open source, so available to others.
That's the aim. To make those magic words, the complex but necessary legal arguments, the counterfilings needed to fight these kinds of procedural traps, accessible to the average person, not just to him.
So it's about democratizing the defense against these alleged systemic maneuvers.
You could put it that way. By trying to bridge that huge knowledge and speed gap that currently exists between the professional legal insiders and the public, he's basically saying that technology might be the only way to break a control mechanism that relies on legal opacity and manipulating the clock.
If you, as a person, can't possibly master the arcane procedures and react instantaneously,
A machine has to do it for you, or at least provide the tools to level the playing field.
it's the ultimate concession, in a way. If the opposing network controls the legal timeline, then your counter network absolutely must control computational time.
It's a defense built on the premise that if human limitations prevent meaningful participation against an impossible deadline, then technology has to step in to ensure something resembling due process can actually happen.
Which brings us, I think, to the end of our deep dive into this alleged ACME Law Signature TTP, #tag outro.
Yeah, we've definitely walked through the pretty intricate mechanics of it. This alleged ACME Law TTP, focusing on that surgical exploitation of Texas Rule 21, the 3-day notice rule.
Right, and how that TTP, according to the source, is only truly effective because of its alleged partner. That systemic advantage in getting favorable, compressed judicial calendar scheduling.
Which functionally guarantees that effective opposition is logistically denied right from the outset.
We saw how this combination allegedly creates this procedural minefield where any substantive objection is almost predetermined to fail on a technicality. But then we also looked at the countermeasure.
The Roadrunner law concept,
Mm.
using technology, machine speed, to defeat that critical timing constraint, responding almost instantly, creating formalized objections, and importantly, generating evidence for potential appellate review down the line.
This whole deep dive, it really illustrates a potentially profound strategic reality, doesn't it? When a legal system, which is supposed to be about due process and fairness,
Right.
when it can be meticulously, systematically manipulated, as the source alleges, to actually create a denial of access through its own procedural rules.
Then maybe the most powerful defense isn't just finding a better lawyer.
Maybe not. The evidence presented here, the source's entire strategy shift, suggests the most effective defense might actually be the raw ability to respond at machine speed.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question, I think, for you, the listener, to mull over.
Yeah. If securing justice, if leveling the playing field against this kind of highly organized procedural exploitation truly requires mastering not just the facts, but the arcane magic words and the ability to meet deadlines that human capacities simply cannot, is technology now the only way? Is it the essential element needed to ensure truly equal access to the law in the face of such tactics?